High fly ball into right field. She is gone. In a year that has been so improbable, the impossible has happened. This one by Mattingly. Oh, hang on to the roof. Goodbye, home run. Mattingly. Tuck waits one. Deep left field. Down the line. That ball is out of here. Out of here.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Tablesetters, covering all things Major League Baseball. As always, I'm Steve, joined with my tag partner, Devin. What's going on, man?
What's up? What's up? Just over here watching Team USA scare the life out of us USA baseball fans over here. So we're going to distract ourselves a little bit by talking about the American League West tonight. And hopefully by the end of the episode, we look up and the USA has made some progress.
So if you want to look your best, you know it's time to go west or whatever the commercial says. We're here talking division previews. We did National League West earlier today. You guys checking out AL West, and we'll be giving you guys all the division previews as time goes on to get you guys every bit as prepared as you can be for the marathon that is Major League Baseball on the 25th on Netflix, all the great stuff. But as Devin mentioned, we are covering the AL West today. Before we get to that, make sure you guys follow us on Instagram and on X at TablesettersPod. Leave a 5-star review wherever you are to support the show. It helps and goes a very long way. We're putting a lot of work in this offseason, and honestly, doing all the episodes we've done, whether it be for college, fantasy, for the WBC, of course, Major League News, it made this offseason go by quickly. I know it was the endless winter in the Northeast, Devin, but it feels like we are in a spot where the baseball season is a 24/7 news cycle, much similar to where the NFL became a couple years ago. Now MLB's on that calendar as well.
Absolutely. I mean, this might be the busiest time of the year for us between division previews and then overall predictions, trying to squeeze in the college baseball stuff as well. Some fantasy, World Baseball Classic on top of that. But it's fun, man. Like, it's something we enjoy doing. So when you're busy doing something that you love, I'll take that any day. But AL West this year, man, I think we talked NL West, like you said earlier today. We recorded that episode. At least the AL West is a little less predictable than that one. I think there's a pretty heavy favorite, but not like the Dodgers at the top of the NL West.
So for the American League West, let's get into it with our meat of the order.
We have the meat.
All right, so we entered this year in maybe a moment of transition because nearly a decade, this division ran through Houston, synonymous, and maybe apropos because of the fact that we're in Houston for the WBC, Daikin Park, all that stuff. But from the years 2017 through 2024, Houston captured 7 full season division titles, appeared in multiple ALCS series. This is a team that established one of the more sustained runs. Maybe you call it a dynasty. It depends on how you talk about it with how you are contributing that to whoever. But we closed the book on the Astros in that way. We know they're going to be an X factor during this season as well. But we saw the Seattle Mariners seizing opportunity, finishing 90-72, claiming the AL West crown, edging the Astros by 3 games, ending their long reign atop the division. And we watched it break through. We've covered it extensively on this show. Everyone's been talking about it. Feels like a lifetime ago at this point, where they took a 3-2 series lead before ultimately falling in 7 games, the closest the franchise had ever come to reaching the World Series. And I think that's a big piece of how we're coming into this year. It's hard to ignore that, where you have the positives and negatives of the fallout of that coming that close. Will Seattle take that and want to take the next step? Are they motivated by that? Or is they getting so close that you fall back down the mountain? Is it harder to climb back up? So they're going to enter this season with momentum. The division title, a roster built around the pitching. They got offensive power. And I think this is Seattle's division to lose. And I'm not going to bury the lead here and talk about my pick, but they're coming in with the crown and they're not used to being in this position.
Yeah, and I think if you look at the guys up and down that roster, absolutely, they're certainly motivated to take that next step. But that can work against you sometimes. Like, it's the same thing as like wanting to hit the crap out of the ball and squeezing the bat a little too tight, right? Tensing up a little bit too much. You don't want to do that for a full season, right? You got to just kind of, it sounds so cliche, and it is. I guess that's why it sounds like it, because it is. But you really, that long season, you have to take it day by day. Otherwise, you won't find yourself in the playoffs. So I think it's the tough part is like, we just want to get back there. We know we're good enough to be there. Can we fast forward through this? Well, no, you can't. You got to go through the dog day. You got to go through the cold days at the end of March when the season starts, the cold days in April with the wind. You got to go through all that. The dog days of August, everything. You're going to go through some nagging injuries. You're going to lose some guys. So, like, climbing up that mountaintop, no matter how good you are, it can be a little bit of a pain in the ass when you could taste the World Series appearance. So we'll see how they handle it. If we're going to dig into them as a team, there's a lot of strengths. We talk about strengths and weaknesses during these division previews of each team. Wonderful lineup. You add Brendan Donovan to the top, right? You got to love it. Yes, Eugenio Suarez is gone. Yes, Jorge Polanco is gone. Those are not insignificant. Those are significant losses. Love that they did what they needed to do to keep Josh Naylor here. He fits. I still do think they have plenty of slug. You got Cal Raleigh. You got Julio Rodriguez. You got Josh Naylor. And some of these other guys have some pop too. Love adding a guy like Donovan to go back to him because one of the biggest problems on this team for the last couple of years has been strikeouts. Even the best of the best on this team seem to have some strikeout issues. You bring a guy like Brendan Donovan over here that can play all over the field and also is going to put the ball in play. Love the addition very, very much. Another guy I think is interesting to watch. Lots of fantasy analysts are calling for a breakout year from Dominic Canzone, which is, a member of Team Italy, kicking USA's ass right now. If he's another guy, if he can break out and add to all that other established offense, I mean, watch out. So he's a guy to keep an eye on. Starting pitching wise, like I don't think I have to go through the names. Next to the Dodgers, they have a case for best pitching staff in baseball. At the very least, second best pitching staff in baseball. They've been, this is not me trying to make any kind of jinx, for the most part, remarkably healthy. Now, I know Bryce Miller was out for a bit last year, but overall, compared to other teams, I just remember as a Met fan, those years of having deGrom, Matt, Syndergaard, Wheeler, Harvey, right? Those guys. There's an amazing stat out there, and I don't have it right now, but about how many times they were actually able to go through the rotation of those five guys over several years. It's a very small number. And with this rotation, it's been amazing. These guys who are absolute studs have been able, for the most part, to stay together. So the rotation is just unbelievable. Like, as a Mariner fan, what a privilege to know you have those guys starting each day. Incredible. Bullpen should be really solid as well. I know some people have some concerns there, but Andres Munoz at the back end has been fantastic. Every once in a while, he'll scare you, but I feel like elite closers do that. There's very few who get on that mound and you're just 100% confident. Even the best of the best, I think, a lot of times will scare the crap out of you. I know Edwin Diaz, as a Met fan, did that to me for years and would strike his way out of some big, big messes. But you also got Matt Brash, Edward Bizzardo, Gabe Spire, like all guys that have shown signs of dominance at times. So I'm looking at offense. I'm looking at starting pitching. I'm looking at bullpen. There is no reason that this team should not be able to get back to the World Series if things go right for them. One of the most well-rounded rosters in the league. One thing I'll keep my eye on, other than Canzone, who I talked about as maybe a breakout, Julio Rodriguez. One knock on him over the last couple of years, he's kind of become notorious for slow starts and not being the same player for both halves. Second half, he comes on strong. Man, I want to see him get off to a fast start and never look back this year because we know that guy is an absolutely elite talent. He has all the skills in the world. So, but yeah, I mean, Mariners fan, you got to be excited. You got to be chomping at the bit for this season to start.
Yeah, before we move too far away from Dominic Canzone, he is my X factor as well. And I think it's not something that is a secret to anyone. We saw what he was able to do when he returned to the majors in June. Over the course of 80 games, he had the slash line that was good for 304, 362, 488, 144 WRC plus. It was nearly identical to the 145 mark produced by Raleigh during the same span of those 80 games. I know it's cherry picking stats. You can also look at some of the StatCast metrics from 2025, revealing that he posted an expected weighted on base average that was actually higher than Kyle Riley's, which is remarkable considering the season we saw. And again, we have to put some love on Kyle Riley and what we saw. And there's been, during our fantasy episode, we've been having the discussion of natural regression because it was arguably the greatest offensive season by a catcher ever. 60 home runs, driving in 125 runs, scoring 110 times. I mean, we watch what Cal Riley did, just an absolute superstar being born in front of our eyes, and watching him with the Team USA. And he has a presence now. He was always a good player, but it feels like he is one of the faces of baseball, truly is. And I think his power surge transformed the Mariners lineup. And he really provided that offensive backbone for a team that historically relied more heavily on the pitching staff, as you mentioned before. And again, looking at some of the other guys in this, I think the bullpen is going to be stable in the late innings. Andres Munoz, one of the hardest throwing closers in the sport, a guy that, again, you can talk about bullpens being a dart throw, but I think he's a guy that if you had to go to war with one closer, there's a handful of them. And I think Munoz is in that boat with you, of a guy that you would know that let's trust this guy at the back end of a game. I mean, there's a lot to love about this lineup. The Julio piece, Josh Naylor, of course, who's back there retained by Seattle in free agency. He provided additional production after joining them late in the season at the trade deadline. I really like this lineup. I think there's a lot to like here. The Brendan Donovan piece is well taken because of the strikeout issues. This is a guy who I would have loved to be on the New York Yankees as a Yankee fan. The price that they paid to get him didn't feel like it was extensive. It felt like it was doable for any contender. So he's a guy who's going to be a difference maker by all projections. It looks like he's leading off in some projections of what the Mariners lineup will look like. So he's a guy who can get on base, get there, and set the table for guys like Cal Riley and Julio Rodriguez, and then Naylor. And let's not forget Randy Arozarena out there as well. So I guess we'd be remiss if we didn't discuss the the Cal Riley and Randy Arozarena situation that happened at WBC. Are you buying or selling that that's an actual issue? Brady Farkas commented on social and kind of diffused it a little bit, but it feels like it was a little bit of a tense moment between both players where Cal refused to shake Randy's hand during the WBC.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't love it. I didn't love the reaction by Randy Arozarena. I couldn't tell. I'm like, is he joking, or does he have a really dry sense of humor, or what's going on? But actually, the Brady Farkas thing is funny because I texted him about this episode, and I'll tell you why in a minute. But then afterwards, I asked him. I said, by the way, like, do you think, as a Mariner, someone who covers them closely, do you think this Arozarena Cal Raleigh thing is like a legit beef or like just joking around? Like, I'm having trouble reading it. And he's like, you know what? You just inspired me. I'm going to tweet something out. And he tweeted his reaction out. And then after that, something else came out of, I guess, a reporter talked to Cal Raleigh, and he kind of squashed it. He said, he talked about Team USA stuff, but also that now he's talked to Randy since then. They're fine. The coaches talked to both of them, Dan Wilson. So they're making it sound like it's fine. But if there is any little bad blood behind the scenes, listen, we know 162 games with the same dudes. If there's someone who rubs you the wrong way, at some point that flares up again. So, like, maybe we're just digging for like problems because there's not that many with the Mariners. But I if I'm a Mariner fan, I'm a little like, I don't love that. Like, before the season starts, some people at first thought, because the Australia catcher did this the other day, refused to shake hands at the beginning of the game, but said it was because of pine tar. Like, he didn't want pine tar to affect like his throwing hand or anything like that. But Cal Raleigh didn't really say that. He didn't use that as an excuse. I don't know. The whole thing was very strange to me amongst teammates who got to Game 7 of the ALCS last year. A little off-putting, I would say, but I'm not really sure to what to make of it yet, to be honest.
So before we move on from Seattle, I do want to mention that for Canzone, we're both picking him as a breakout player, a guy who can help lengthen this lineup. We would definitely have to talk about the postseason run, and there was a lot of guys that contributed, and watching what he was doing in the postseason, 3 for 28 without a home run. So that was questionable. 4 for 15 without an extra base hit. Like, this is a guy that, again, you have to look at his performances. It is contagious. And we're looking at him you mentioned playing with Team Italy and watching he's doing over there. He hit that upper deck 3-run home run against Team Brazil. They wound up winning 8-0. And a lot of Mariners fans breathing a sigh of relief because that was the first time Canzone had gone deep since September 23rd of last season. And they're hoping that kind of unlocks something with that. So it's something to watch for sure, but I love the player. I love the underlying metrics, and this is a team with legitimate postseason aspirations, as we continue to mention. This is a guy that is going to have to produce on the field if he wants to stay in this lineup, because I'm sure that there's someone else that can replace him coming forward.
Yeah, it'd be fun to watch the youngsters too that will probably contribute, especially since they let Polanco walk. Cole Young, right? And I think that letting Polanco go, especially when the Mets paid him $20 million a year, I thought it made sense for Seattle because you got so many young infielders that are like ready or close to ready to contribute. So Cole Young, maybe eventually Colt Emerson will find in the mix. I know JP Crawford, I feel like his time as the starting shortstop might not be that much longer, but we'll see. And just to wrap up here, my X factor is Andres Munoz. I mentioned before, I think the only thing other than injury that could hurt this team is if Munoz takes a step back and has one of those annoying seasons where he's blowing saves. You know how that feels when you're a fan of a good, solid team, but you just blow a bunch of games. And Seattle hasn't had that problem, but that's something that can just kind of rear its ugly head every once in a while. I'm going over the 89.5 wins that is projected. And one other thing, for this episode, I reached out to either a fan or someone who covers the team on Twitter or texted for their thoughts on this. I asked them to complete this sentence, and I did this for every team in the AL West. So I was asking them to finish the sentence that starts with, the Mariners will win the division if. So I texted Brady Farkas, the host of Refuse to Lose, two-time Tablesetters guest. He finished it like this. The Mariners will win the division if they stay healthy. They're at the point organizationally where they're built properly. Injury is the only thing I think that stands in their way, and that possibility is always looming. So that's from Brady Farkas of Refuse to Lose. And I agree. I think that makes complete sense. Nothing for me to really push back against there.
Yeah, we appreciate the contribution, Brady. We love you. Always welcome on the show. Can't wait to talk ball with you when you come on next. Moving on to the Houston Astros. This is a team we mentioned before that you had their iron fist on this division. They finally shook loose here. And although they surrendered the division title last year, they remain a formidable opponent with a roster that's built around a lot of vets, an elite offensive talent for sure when they're able to go, and starts and ends with guys like Jose Altuve and the returning Carlos Correa, who's back in a Houston uniform, and not to mention Christian Walker at first base. These guys, and again, Yordan Alvarez remains one of the more feared hitters in baseball when healthy. He can change the course of a game in a single swing. And I think for him, if you look at Alvarez, I mean, he was limited by injuries as well. You talk about that being a factor in contributions. He was only playing 48 games, produced a 797 OPS. That's not Alvarez. That's not the player. And it kind of shows where Houston was able to hang around, even with the limitations of Alvarez, shows how deep that they actually kind of did with sort of reshaping, retooling who they are with the identity. I give them a lot of credit. Again, look at guys like Jeremy Pena. He's a guy that was a guy that they looked at as last year a bright spot for them. Hunter Brown is the team's ace going into this year for sure. Maybe people call it a breakout season last year. I don't think so. I think that we've always seen this guy have the talent. He's kind of finally realizing the talent that he truly is. I understand he was overshadowed by some of the other pitchers like Skubal, like Crochet, but Hunter Brown is a reason why he was top 5 in AL Cy Young voting, because he was that good last year. And again, look at the bullpen for sure. I mean, the bullpen for what they're bringing out to the table is again, Josh Hader. Is he a guy? I mean, he was dominant for the shoulder inflammation ending his season prematurely. Are you able to get this bullpen and lock down these games at the end? I'm not sure. There's a lot to like with this team. I think obviously the weaknesses might be the starting rotation. If you kind of look what they put together, and I'm sure you probably have similar stuff, because if you look at that rotation, there are questions outside of Hunter Brown. We'll talk about Tetsuya Imai. He's a new addition coming over here. He is actually my X factor here to kind of combine my weakness and X factor. But when Christian Javier is lining up as your second starter in the rotation, there are question marks here, because you watch him 46 starts last year, a 4.47 ERA, and you're leaning on Lance McCullers Jr., who struggled with injuries for several seasons. And the rest of the rotation, you're going to fill it out with guys like Mike Burrows or Ryan Weiss. There is a lack of stability that, when you think about Houston, when they were dominating for those years, when they were crowning all these division titles and hanging those banners and then going to the World Series and ALCS, they were built around reliable pitching. And I do believe also, additionally, a lot of these several key offensive players, as we mentioned, they're entering their mid-30s. And we know what happens. There's some questions about how longer this core can remain being elite as far as production goes. I know when you see Correa in that Houston Astros uniform, but this is not the same Correa that took the field at this point 10 years ago. Like, this is not the same Correa, not the same Altuve. They have to play a little bit different now. Look at some of the ages. Jose Altuve will be 36 this year. You have Christian Walker, who's 35 going into the season. Carlos Correa is going to be 32 this year. These are players, and again, that's not ancient, but in baseball, it's a young man's game, and that sometimes rears his head quicker than usual, and that turns pretty quickly.
Yeah, no, I'm going to echo some of what you said and add a few things, but I think if the offense is healthy, the age is a good point. It really is, but I do think the offense still has a chance to be sneaky good. A full season of Carlos Correa back in the mix. Obviously, they made the move for him, which is pretty surprising to see them bring him back home last year. Isaac Paredes has shown he can mash in that ballpark. It's like made for him. He got second year for Cam Smith. We'll see what progress he can make. You mentioned Christian Walker. I feel like he's got to be better. He's got to be better than he was last year. Jose Altuve. Yes, I agree. I think he's probably starting to be on the decline. I don't think it's a sharp decline. My thing is, can we please get more from Yordan Alvarez? Can this guy stay on the field? It is so frustrating because legitimately he's not, when he is right, and you can look at the numbers, when he's been right, he is not much of a step down from Shohei Ohtani and Aaron Judge as a hitter. Seriously. And like some people would argue that he's on that level. Like he is capable of being that good. Just stay healthy. Before I get to the pitching, I will say there's this story that's gone around for a while that never got resolved. Like they have too many infielders when everybody's healthy. Now, right now, Jeremy Pena has the finger injury. So if you look at roster resource, they won't include him in the starting lineup, and they'll put Carlos Correa at shortstop. Jose Altuve back at second. I know they experimented with the left field stuff. Didn't look great. I don't know. Who would you take? Jose Altuve in left field, Jason Dominguez in left field? That's a question for another day, but not great. Hopefully Jason Dominguez is out there.
I would take Altuve, I think, honestly.
God damn. Anyway, so yeah, you got Jose Altuve at second. Isaac Paredes at third, Christian Walker at first, but Jeremy Pena is going to come back and he's going to play short. Are you DHing one of those guys? Because you really want to DH Yordan Alvarez. Like, we don't want this guy lumbering around the outfield anymore. The guy can't stay healthy, right? So there was all these rumors about, like, there's going to be a Isaac Paredes trade. There's going to be a Christian Walker trade. Like, they're going to have to manage that. They're going to have to figure that out. Maybe there is still a move to be made, but I feel like at this point, probably not happening. So it's just something to keep an eye on as the year goes. Is that a good problem to have, or is it a legitimate problem that's gonna hamper them? Oh, Pete Crow Armstrong, breaking news, cuts the Italy lead from 8-1 to 8-4 with a 3-run homer. But back to the Astros pitchers. They were destroyed over the last year by pitching injuries. It's just one after the next going down. Brandon Walter was a guy that I like because he's a University of Delaware alum, but he was doing some nice things for them, and then he goes down as well. I still think they have the chance to be decent, though, or pretty good, honestly. You mentioned Hunter Brown, one of the best young pitchers in Major League Baseball. I think a big question is, can Christian Javier return to form? Listen, you might not love him as the number 2 guy, but he has shown flashes over the years of like ace-like stuff. You as a Yankee fan know he's had some monster starts against the New York Yankees. I think maybe the bigger question than that is, what do they get out of Tatsuya Imai in his first year? We've heard some people talking about what it's like to be in the box against that wrong way slider and a few of his other pitches. There's guys that said they've never seen certain pitches that he's thrown. So he'll be fun to watch to see what they get, but a bit of an unknown with what he's going to look like in Major League Baseball, especially with a different ball. And then you got to mention the bullpen a little bit. The Hader injury is obviously super significant, moves everybody else up, gives everyone else more responsibility. This is why you don't trade Brian Abreu, even in a walk year. If you plan on competing with all those vets that you're paying big money, you're planning on trying to compete. So they made the right move by sticking with Brian Abreu, even in a walk year here. He's great. Like, don't get it twisted. I'm not really worried about him moving into the closer role. I'd be more concerned about the other guys behind him having to move up and take more responsibility there. But the over-under is 86.5. I will take the under here. Again, I think there's too many of those ifs, and those ifs bother me. I think if you have one too many, like, they're not all going to go your way. Let's be honest. So I'll take the under. My X factor, I cheated here. I usually try to narrow it down to one. I'm going to give you one offense, one pitcher. And I mentioned him already. Yordan Alvarez, that's an obvious one. Christian Javier is my other one. Can he return to his top form? And I'll give you this before I let you finish up your thoughts on the Astros. My quote here, I reached out to H-Town Wheelhouse, host of Locked On Astros, one of our very first guests when we did an Astros centered episode, probably more than a year ago at this point, when we started inviting people on to be guests. So he finished the sentence here. The Astros will win the AL West if the team stays healthy, and if they can hit with runners in scoring position. So the healthy part seems to be a trend amongst all these people I reached out to. This is baseball fans. We're always going to bring up health. We just know it's just something that's going to happen. So it sounds like, he didn't list 10 different things, 2 things, and he feels like that will get them the division. Stay healthy, score with runners, or hit with runners in scoring position.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I'm also a little bit on the under as well from them. And I do believe that there is a lot to like about this team. There's a lot of the DNA in this squad that there's a lot of guys that know how to win. And then you can't take that away from them. They know how to win. And there's something about that jersey in that ballpark that they just find a way to pull it out. For the my piece, I mentioned he's my X factor. I love the quotes we saw from all spring training in Astros media of the splitter. People talking about how devastating the pitch is in the arsenal. And Terrell Trammell, who struck out during the session, was him. He was talking about, he's like, I've played this game for 24 years now and 11 professionally. I've never seen a pitch like that before in my life, which is a quote.
The quote.
Yeah. And then Carlos Correa talked about how it, like, the splitter tunnels off into a fastball, which is deception that forces hitters to have to adjust in real time. He was comparing it to Yamamoto as well. So if you kind of take that in stride, but I mean, you look at a lot of the teammates talking about how all the pitches work together. It's not just this pitch is good, this pitch is good. They sort of lead into the other. And that's something to watch for sure. I think Imai is a guy that we talked extensively in the offseason about his success. We're 3-time MPB All-Star, 4 consecutive seasons with an ERA lower than 2.5. How does that translate? There is a little bit of pressure from it. It's maybe in a middle ground of a landing spot. I wouldn't say it's the hardest landing spot media-wise, but this is a team, a fan base that expects to win. And there are expectations for him to go out there and contribute. So it's not the Murakami landing spot. This is sort of the middle area where it's not low stakes. So I'm expecting him to come out there and be a guy that they rely on pretty heavily, as we mentioned before. Right now, a lot of the roster resource had him slotted at number 3, but it wouldn't shock me by mid-year that he's right under Hunter Brown. Is like, we're relying on this guy every 5th day to be a guy that's a stopper for us.
Yeah, you may be right. He may be more and more important as the year goes on, especially if he shows himself well. But you got to remember, like, some of these guys that come over from NPB, like, it takes him a while to adjust. I mean, even Yamamoto, like, he had some bumps in the road in that first year, and eventually, I mean, pretty smooth sailing. But we'll see. We'll know pretty quickly if he's going to adjust quickly or if it's going to take a little bit.
So let's head over to the Texas Rangers here, and they enter 2026 with a pitching staff that I had to look at the numbers twice, man, because like I was like, was this correct? Especially with what we saw last year. They led all of MLB in ERA last year with a 3.7 mark, which is, you look at Jacob deGrom, you look at Nathan Eovaldi. deGrom, I mean, he's a guy you're very familiar with. He's to me a Hall of Fame pitcher if he puts another couple years in a row that are like this. Watching him when he's healthy is just magical. We had the privilege in New York to watch him very closely in the media. He's a guy that maybe slid into the background superstar wise. No one really talks about him, being that he's in Texas at this point. He took the money and did what he did. Another guy, you look at this, Jack Leiter, he took an important step forward for them. He demonstrates a lot of the raw talent that makes him one of the highly regarded pitching prospects. You want to talk about post hype. Jack Leiter certainly falls into that category as well. And you look at the strength in the rotation with Mackenzie Gore. I think this is a guy that we saw a really high level of execution last year. We all expected that it would eventually tucker out by middle of the year, and that's exactly what it did. The bottom did fall out. I think there is significant upside for him, 2 remaining years of team control for him. This is a guy that could contribute. He's slotted as their 3rd starter. But again, despite the elite pitching, which again, you can look at, they led Major League Baseball in ERA. They still finished 81-81, which speaks to how disappointing this offense was. And every single week we get on the show and talk about, it's got to turn the other way. Looking at the lineup, looking at the players in this lineup, that they should be able to go out there. The Corey Seagers of the world, the Wyatt Langfords, go down, Josh Smith. These guys are guys you're expecting to hit, and they just didn't. Last year, they ranked 22nd in runs scored, 26 in OPS. And again, the pitching staff, despite being really good, had little margin for error. And again, plaguing Jacob deGrom was the same stuff that was happening in New York when he was here, that he wasn't able to get the support he needed. Then we saw, of course, the injuries. Corey Seager, he missed 60 games. Again, this is a thing with the Texas Rangers where, is there something going on with the ballpark? Like, what is the issue with this offense at this point where they are not able to put it together? This used to be one of the best hitting ballparks in all of baseball, and it's just not there. Brandon Nimmo, I love in this lineup. I know you'll speak to him as well. But and again, if you're relying on big at bats in center field from Evan Carter to be out there for more than 100 games, like are you taking the over on that? That's another thing that's a question mark.
Yeah, I think the ballpark thing is the story here, because what you're saying, the pitching numbers being best in the league and the hitting numbers being strangely bad, it all goes back to the ballpark factor, which it's not a 1-year story. This has now been happening for a couple of years, and it basically, the ballpark factor has completely flipped. It was once more of a hitter's park and is now like the best pitcher's park in the league. It's not supposed to be. Like, they're researching this. We've heard like Chris Young come out and say, we also find it strange and we're trying to figure it out. So hopefully they figure it out, because it's got to be super frustrating for these offensive players. I mean, the pitchers probably like it, but not if they're getting 0 run support as well. So I think that very, very strange story, and we'll see. But can a guy like Jock Peterson bounce back? He was anemic, which I loved that signing at the time, and just terrible. Evan Carter, you mentioned him. Years ago, you and I were so high on him, as were many people. Problem is, man, like, health obviously won, which we've now, I feel like in these division previews, we mentioned health like a billion times, and we kind of have to. The other thing is, like, can this dude hit lefties? And I will say that's my favorite thing about the Brandon Nimmo acquisition. I'm not super bullish on the Nimmo acquisition for Texas specifically. I don't think it moves the needle all that much for them, but I do like if he can take an Evan Carter under his wing. Brandon Nimmo is also a lefty that for a while had trouble hitting against left-handed pitching. They'd sit him against left-handed pitching. So like, and he ended up improving, where he was a full-time everyday player, no matter who they were facing in the lineup. So maybe that helps. But I do think I'm like only halfway towards what I want to say about the Rangers, and I feel like we've already named multiple ifs here. The pitching, obviously the strength. Like, can Jacob deGrom do it again? He proved like he's back, but can he do it again this year? Nathan Eovaldi is basically as consistent as it gets when he's out there. You can almost pencil in 6-7 innings, 2 runs or less. Sometimes they'll have really high strikeout games. I love having that guy on their roster. Mackenzie Gore, you mentioned, very exciting for him to sit under the learning tree of those two. Jack Leiter, you already mentioned. Kumar Rocker, maybe he doesn't start with the team, but maybe eventually contributes. Again, electric arm if they can get him right. The bullpen, just as it did last year, still leaves something to be desired, at least on paper. I would have loved to see them go get Robert Suarez. That was one of my predictions, and I just felt like it would have been such a good fit for the Texas Rangers, put him in the back end of that bullpen. But yeah, there's still some questions there in the bullpen of how you're going to get things done the last 3 innings or so, 4 innings sometimes. And I will add this. We don't talk all that much about managers. We talked about Tony Vitello in the NL West preview, but Skip Schumacher, love that hire. Love that hire for the Texas Rangers. I think eventually he gets the most out of this team. I'm just not sure it's this year. I'm not sure it's the first year.
Yeah, there's a lot to like about what Skip Schumacher is going to bring personality-wise to this team. We talk about, you mentioned Vitello bringing his brand of baseball over. It feels like Schumacher has exactly what he wants to be this Rangers team going forward. And, again, my X factor is Nathan Eovaldi. You mentioned some of the stats. The injury questions are there. Copy paste what we've said about other players. Eovaldi does have injury history that makes this a little bit more pressing for him. But watching him and deGrom on the field at certain points of last year, the 1-2 combo in baseball, that's formidable. And again, ballpark factor aside, like these guys are 2 guys who have, let's not forget, they've both done it for a while. That these are not guys that are 1-2 year blips in the radar. When Nathan Eovaldi's healthy, we can see what he's able to do. But again, those if questions are a factor in who the player is, because you watch Eovaldi miss more than 2 months of last year, multiple injuries, which was kind of eclectic. He had the sports hernia surgery during the offseason. He had a rotator cuff strain during the year. He's age 36, so he's trying his best to maintain his health over the course of a season, but it's going to be an important factor for the Rangers and what they're getting out of him this year. And again, behind all these other guys, Jack Leiter sitting under the learning tree, you mentioned Mackenzie Gore. This is a team, again, how can you figure out that they have one of the best pitching staffs in baseball and you're not fully compensating an offense on the other side of things? It just makes you, it has to be very frustrating for a Rangers fan base that saw the highest level of success only a few years ago. That's our first episode of Tablesetters talking about their title defense. And since that point, it's been downhill. And again, flags fly forever, but this is a team that seemed like they're on the precipice of being competitive, almost like the window the Astros opened. And the Rangers are so far from where that is. Maybe the ballpark is a huge factor, but at some point, the team has to be able to change the identity. Maybe a guy like Nimmo does it. Maybe he's such a strong personality that they wanted him out of New York because it wasn't meshing with these guys. But is Nimmo going to be the catalyst they're looking for in this lineup? But you need Wyatt Langford to be a superstar. You need Evan Carter to be on the field. You need Corey Seager to be healthy. These are things that are not guarantees, and that makes me questionable on whether they're going to be able to be competitive in a division that has a lot of talent in it.
Yeah, lots of talent. My X factor, you just named him, Corey Seager. I think he's still an elite player when he's out there, and I think he's proven that. But how many games are they getting out of Corey Seager? 83.5 is the mark. We're going over or under. I'm taking the under here. I'm just not convinced. Too many ifs, and it's been very frustrating the last couple years. So I am taking the under. Those top two pitchers you love, but like you mentioned it, they are aging too. So there's that concern. I'll give you the fan quote here. Jeff Bates has pretty big following on X. Actually, YouTube, I think, is really where you can find him most of the time. But a Texas Rangers fan at Jeff Bates X. I asked him to finish that sentence. The Rangers can win this division he said, if the starting pitching stays healthy, Robert Garcia ends up as a top 15 closer, Seager stays healthy, and Evan Carter is healthy and hits well. So you can already see his answer was a lot longer than the first two that we talked about, which goes back to there's a lot more ifs that need to happen. Pitching stays healthy. Garcia's a top 15 closer. Seager stays healthy. Evan Carter is healthy and hits well. So, I think it's an appropriate answer from him.
So moving over to the Los Angeles Angels, and there's a lot of conversation about this team, about finding their identity post-fall out of Ohtani being there years ago, trying to get back to the postseason. And look at this lineup again. You want to talk about strengths of the Angels. You look at Zach Neto, and again, superstar player. If you're following baseball, how do you not like what Zach Neto brings to the table? Last year, we saw him hit 26 home runs, 26 stolen bases in 128 games. It's a rare combination of power and speed that could eventually make him one of baseball's more dynamic players. I'm that high on Zach Neto and what he brings to the table.
Love him.
We look at Joe Adell. Again, this is a guy, maybe a post-hype player. He displayed impressive power potential. Mike Trout, of course, is in this lineup. Can't dismiss him. I understand that he's going to be 35 this year. A lot of injuries underneath the belt of him. And behind the plate, Logan O'Hoppe, Long Island guy. He continues to be viewed as one of the organization's most promising young players. He's a guy that seems to be leading a pitching staff. He's entering his age 26 season at this point. Can O'Hoppe take the next step? Those are the positives I'm pulling out of this. I mean, again, the Angels are a team that's searching for an ability to compete at a consistent level. And if you're building around a guy like a Zach Neto or Nolan Shanuel, these are guys that are contributors at a very high level. These are players I like. They're not just good on the field. They're good for the clubhouse. You can tell that they are leaders. They are guys that are guys that bring people together. And a guy like Zach Neto, if he's going to be your superstar player, I'm all in on that. That's a guy I can really get behind being your superstar.
Oh, yeah. How can you not love Zach Neto? A competitor out there can do everything that a star shortstop needs to do. Yeah, you named it. The lineup does have plenty of pop. You go up and down that lineup. There's pop there. You might be adding Christian Moore to the mix as well, which is fun to watch when it happens. The Josh Lowe trade, I've always really liked the player that Josh Lowe is, but another guy's like, I'm getting tired of mentioning this. You got to stay on the field. He just hasn't shown that. And I think a lot of people are skeptical of whether that's going to change in an Angels uniform. But there's things to like they didn't just do nothing. I mean, Artie DeMoreno did get a lot of people very upset because he had something along the lines of saying, like, I don't think winning or I don't think getting to the World Series or something like that is in the top 5 of what interests a fan, which was like one of the worst statements I've ever heard from somebody in that position. But anyway, the real story, I think, here for the Angels that people are looking at, and it has been this and it continues to be pitching. So they made some very, very interesting moves here. The Grayson Rodriguez trade, honestly, when you think about it, could go down as one of the best moves the Angels have ever made if it works out. You got multiple years of control. One of the best former prospects we've ever seen. A lot of hype behind him, just hasn't worked out. Another health thing. But they traded a player that was, you probably thought was going to be traded anyway, in Taylor Ward, who only had 1 year remaining on the deal. So if it works out, great. If it doesn't, it's like, all right, well, what was keeping Taylor Ward for 1 more year really going to do for us? That's going to change the story. So I like the risky move there. We'll see. Nothing's looked great for Grayson Rodriguez in spring. The velocity was down on the slider a little bit the other day, which is not what you want to see when you're looking at a guy that's had injury issues, but it's still pretty early here. Alek Manoah was brought in. That's a reclamation project in my mind. Obviously showed flashes of brilliance in the beginning of his time in Toronto and just fell off a cliff. We'll see if they can get something out of Alek Manoah. Reed Detmers, I think, is really like what most Angel fans have their eyes on. He's getting a second shot as a starter, did some really good things out of the bullpen. This is a dude who can strike out the world, but for some reason has not been able to put it all together. We've seen him go out there and just the K rate can be elite. So him back in the rotation is something to watch for sure. Kikuchi and Soriano at the top of the rotation. I mean, that's not bad. You could do worse than that. It's not elite by any means, but those two can go out there. They're very capable, and every once in a while can be dominant. The back end of the bullpen, I think, is worth watching. They've got some electric arms back there. Again, health comes into play. They brought Drew Pomeranz back in. Robert Stevenson coming back from injury. Eventually, Ben Joyce hopefully coming back from injury. Those dudes are, they can make guys look foolish. So hopefully all three of those guys are in the mix, and it's an electric back end of the bullpen. I do think some of the young pitchers who maybe don't start out in the rotation and start in AAA, we're talking about like guys like Caden Dana, Sam Algieri, like those guys are going to have opportunities. Like, do you think Grayson Rodriguez and Alek Manoah and maybe even Reed Detmers, do you think those guys are giving you 32 starts each? I don't think so. So the young pitchers are going to have to, yeah, I think that's a safe one. So the young pitchers are going to have to pitch in at some point. And more to watch. Nelson Rada, really exciting prospect on the offensive side for the Angels. He's getting closer and closer. I feel like he's been around for a while from a very young age. He's getting closer and closer, and the Angels are not going to be gun shy about promoting a prospect when he's showing himself at the AAA level, sometimes even the AA level. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's some things to be optimistic about, but it's tough with the recent history.
Yeah, for my weakness, it's the pitching staff. You read off the names for sure. When you say Kikuchi is your ace of the staff, I feel like there are a lot of question marks, and it will be a challenge this year. We watched them rank near the bottom of the league in ERA last season, and the acquisition of Grayson Rodriguez is intriguing to me. You mentioned before the Taylor Ward piece. Offensively, did they really need Taylor Ward? If Grayson Rodriguez winds up being the guy that everyone thought he would be, he is still only 26 years old. Again, when healthy, he's shown flashes that scouts have said he was the reason why he was taken 11th overall in the 2018 MLB draft. There's a reason why he's a guy. He was ranked number 6 at one point in 2022. He's ranked number 7 as the overall prospect in baseball in 2023. He did not pitch one single pitch last year. He had the surgery to remove bone spurs from his right elbow last August. And according to him, those bone spurs have been bothering him for several years and the reason why he's been not able to live up to his potential. And we shall see. I mean, he pinpointed back in 2022 that those bone spurs were an issue for him back then. And the discomfort altered his mechanics. It contributed to lat injuries in 2024 and 2025, preventing him from maintaining consistent health. So if that was fixed, this Grayson Rodriguez could be a difference maker for this team. Now, again, if you're looking at what he's been able to do for the Angels right now in early parts of spring, the bigger thing here is you mentioned the team control for 4 more seasons. He is potentially a very valuable long-term piece for what they're trying to build here. And I think they're not trying to put restrictions on his workload, which is very interesting because Kurt Suzuki, another manager we want to discuss as well, sort of a guy that's a personality hire sort of thing and a guy that players seem to really gravitate towards. He talked about Rodriguez, saying if he demonstrates he's fully healthy, they're going to be able to put him in the starting rotation without any limitations, which I have reservations about thinking that will be the case. Because again, you look at a guy with his track record going out there, despite being a young guy, you have to be careful with this guy, especially with the fact that he's coming back after not throwing one pitch last year. So for him, you like what you're hearing. You're seeing even the GM come out and talk about the health stuff. And I think for him to embrace this opportunity for a second chance in this organization, rewrite the story of who he is, I do like the risk that they're taking here. But don't make a mistake about it. It is a risk. I understand that maybe it's a low risk because, again, you mentioned Taylor Ward and what was he going to do in this lineup with 1 year of control. So it's sort of maybe the risk is more on Baltimore's side. If Grayson Rodriguez winds up popping and being the ace that you thought he could be, that's an ace that Baltimore could have really used. But yeah, there's a lot to like as far as offense goes. And it's interesting to me for this team. And one of the big storylines is watching them shape into a new identity post Shohei Ohtani, of course, who's been gone a few years at this point. And while he's still there, it's post Mike Trout and finding what this team will look like. We mentioned Zach Neto being the superstar, and we're not eulogizing Trout's career at this point. He's still there. He's DHing. He's playing, and hopefully he'll be healthy this year. But we're finally seeing the shape of this team in the post Trout era, where it's taking shape right now. And you can't help but feel somber about that because, again, we would look at Trout, didn't get an opportunity in October. They let the window pass him by. I think you had generational talent of Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani in the same lineup, and they couldn't do anything with that. Can't help but feel a little bit melancholy about what Mike Trout was able to do. I think it was only, 3 career playoff games in that series against Kansas City the year they won the World Series. It's a damn shame. And hopefully this team can get good fast so that Mike Trout can see October sooner than later. I just don't know if it's in 2026.
Yeah, I mean, you see a superstar kind of start to fade a little bit. It kind of makes you feel your own age, to be honest. But I will say, so over under is set at 70.5. I'm going to take the over. And listen, there's some reasons, again, like I said before, for optimism. They made some moves. I mean, Zach Neto, I believe, missed the first month and a half or 2 months last year. So having him from the very beginning of the season is good. Joe Adell, I feel like just listening to him talk actually recently, he feels like a fully realized player. It took him longer than the average baseball fan wants it to take a top prospect, but we know how athletic that dude is, and I feel like he's found it. So you have that there. I'm not saying they're going to shock the world here, but I think they can go over 70 here. Grayson Rodriguez is my X factor because it is a complete unknown what they get. They have needed an ace for so long. How fun would it be if this actually works out and he finds ace form and he's in an Angel uniform for a long time to come? That would be great. And talking about shock the world, I did send this to one of our, honestly, this guy, I hope he still listens every week, but I know in the beginning of our show, he was one of our first supporters, and we appreciate that. The handle is at Love of Sports 24. He has retitled his Twitter as the Halo Standard Big Angels fan. So the quote I gave him was, I actually started it a little different than the other ones. Instead of just saying the Angels can win the division if, I said the Angels can shock the world and win the division if. And he finished it like this. He didn't give me that much. He was pretty short and sweet, which I was surprised by in the Angels' circumstance. The Angels can shock the world and win the division if Reed Detmers establishes himself as a front of the rotation starter. Do you think that's enough?
No, I don't. I mean, it can make them. I agree with the over, and I think Reed Detmers is going to be a huge difference maker for them if he's healthy. But there's a lot of other question marks. There's a lot. I mean, if you talk about the 2-letter word if, they have a lot of it. They have ranking top 5s in the league. They have more ifs than anybody. You know what I mean? I think they're a team that a lot has to break right, contributing to catastrophic injuries to some of the teams at the top of this division for them to be able to compete at a high level. But again, we watch how quickly the turnaround is. And when you have a superstar like a Zach Neto, that is something that has a gravitational pull to pull everyone up with you. Watch that happen with Kansas City. How quick did that happen under Bobby Witt Jr.'s leadership? Where, again, we looked at them being this rebuilding team in the post-World Series era, and you get a superstar generational talent like a Bobby Witt Jr. If Zach Neto takes that step to be on the par of Bobby Witt Jr., you're looking at a team that has an anchor to it. And for a little bit now, they haven't had the anchor because Mike Trout's haven't been on the field. If you don't have that anchor, it's hard to pull everybody else up.
Yeah, I can buy into that. I've been buying the Zach Neto stock for a while. So, yeah, I like that perspective. So we'll go over 70.5.
So moving over to the Athletics, playing their games in Sacramento. I mean, again, look at this offense. And we've been talking a lot in the offseason about some of these extensions and sort of building out what this core will look like for a very long time. Starts and end with number 16 himself, the first baseman, Nick Kurtz, Big Amish, immediately become a franchise cornerstone. Won American League Rookie of the Year. The OPS was over 1.002. And the power, the plate discipline from what we saw. I mean, he's one of the more dangerous hitters in all of baseball, not just categorizing young hitters. He's a dangerous hitter, period. And then again, you add some of these other guys in this lineup. I mean, Jacob Wilson impressed during his rookie campaign, finishing near the top of the league with a batting average of 311. And again, you look at the power threats in that lineup, go up and down. Dangerous 1 through 9. Brent Rooker, Tyler Soderstrom, Shea Langoliers, Lawrence Butler. And for a team that plays in their ballpark in Sacramento, we've already beat that horse to death at this point with the fact that it is an offensive-heavy park. They finished 12th in Major League Baseball in runs scored. This is a team that, again, pitching is going to struggle. It's similar to the Coors Field effect until they move into a ballpark in Vegas, and who knows how that plays. They're going to have to build towards offense, and right now they did. Looking at this and looking at this lineup up and down, the addition of Jeff McNeil, how does that play here? I really like this lineup. I think if anything, we can use the word to describe them as fun. They're going to make you want to go out and watch some smash mouth baseball. They're going to go out and give a reason for people to tune in to the A's on any given night when you're sitting on the couch, or maybe you want to get out to a ballpark in Sacramento.
Yeah, no, the offense has the chance to be absolutely devastating, to be honest. You named it. I was thinking the same thing. Like, they're building something fun here. I don't think any of us believed John Fisher and those dudes when they said, like, we're going to start ramping up soon to get ready, little by little to our move to Vegas. But like, I hate giving any credit to him, but they've locked some of these guys up. There's rumors that they're going to try to lock up Kurtz as well, right? Jacob Wilson locked up, Tyler Soderstrom locked up, Lawrence Butler locked up, Brent Rooker. So like, they have, at least on the offensive side, and they have some pitching in the minors that's exciting. Remember, they drafted Jamie Arnold out of Florida State, so he's an exciting one to watch. There's Gage Jump is another one people are excited about. So hopefully the pitching starts to get addressed now that the offense looks pretty damn solid for a while here. So obviously, yeah, pitching is the weak spot. I will say, if you want to be an ultra optimist, you could buy into them being maybe just good enough on the pitching side if the offense is truly elite. Luis Severino at the top isn't terrible. The only thing I didn't like is he clearly did not buy into being on that team last year. Just seemed to throw a fit every time he was on the Sacramento mound, which probably hurts their pursuit of trying to bring in other veteran pitchers, to be honest. But I digress. So Jeffrey Springs as your number 2, like, we've seen him be very, very good at times. I like that they brought Aaron Savali in. I thought they needed another veteran. He's not super flashy guy, but been there, done that. Got to get innings out of the middle of the rotation. The bottom of the rotation, to me, is key. Jacob Lopez and Luis Morales, like, they need to surprise people to make this rotation good. Both of them have flashed. Steve made an excellent presentation. If you go to our Roto-Setters episode with the sleepers, Jacob Lopez was one of his sleepers, and he convinced me, man. Like, the metrics, the analytics, like, they show that this guy's in some rare company in some regards. It's just that we haven't seen the major sample size yet. So this is a proving year for him if it's legit or not. But if you buy into that, you could start thinking like, maybe they are good enough on the pitching side. Like, they don't need to be elite on both sides, but maybe. I just think the depth is not there pitching wise. Even if 1 through 5, they're pretty decent. They surprise some people. If 1 or 2 of those guys get hurt, they don't have other guys that are truly ready. Like, they have guys that have pitched in the majors before, but they're not going to impress anybody. So if any of those 5 go down, and I think likely more than one will at some point, they're in trouble. The bullpen is wait and see. I'm not going to analyze the bullpen too much. Most bullpens are wait and see. This one's definitely wait and see. It certainly doesn't look like a top half of the league bullpen, I'll say that, but I'll wait on that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, you're not buying into Hogan Harris as their closer quite yet. Not sure what he's going to give you, brother.
Hogan might drop the leg on you, man. Like, I don't know.
I mean, Mark Leiter Jr. is in that bullpen as well. He has a shot to be their closer. It's kind of like throw it up in the air and see what sticks. Maybe it's bullpen by committee situation for closing games. The Jacob Lopez thing, I'm not going to sit here, as Devin mentioned, go back to Roto-Setters and listen to what I was talking about, where he had the 11 strikeouts per 9 innings rate. That was just remarkable. And the injury played a huge part. He wound up on the injury list to end the year for the left elbow strain. There's a layer of uncertainty there for the Athletics with him there, but there is enough to be optimistic for what he was able to do, striking out 113 batters, only issuing 37 walks. There's a lot to like about the electric stuff. And for them, they're looking at the back end of the rotation. You mentioned Luis Morales, but there's also Jack Perkins, JT Ginn. These are other names that you're probably not feeling comfortable going into April with, like, these are our guys. But if Lopez can remain healthy and have his command be refined a little bit, I think a lot of the underlying tools suggest he could evolve more than just a depth arm and climb up the rankings to be potentially a number 2 or number 3 in this rotation, especially with who's there. But this will be all about offense for them. This is going to be all for them. I've been watching Lopez in the spring, just kind of keep an eye on his numbers, especially since I was so high on him as a sleeper. He did make his Cactus League debut against the Dodgers. It was a little bit uneven for sure. Allowed 3 runs on 3 hits, 1 walk. So the Paez took him deep, back-to-back doubles by Senzel and Ryan Ward that drove in runs. So the takeaway is that he looked physically capable. That was what I took away as the optimist of, like, oh, he's on the mound and he's pitching and his velocity's up. So he's not bothered by the lat strain that put him on the injured list at the end of the year. But again, going back to my point, the offense is going to be the key factor here. Their strength is going to be bash people to death, make that home field advantage for them. And home field advantage of they know the ballpark, they know how it plays, they built their lineup for the power there. And that's the thing, though. All Major League Baseball has the power, and they have the unfortunate task of playing 81 games in that ballpark with the oppressive heat and all of those things. But and I've been saying this about Colorado for a long time, and I mean, make it truly a home field advantage. Everyone looks at home field advantage as bring the fans out and have them be loud, but building your team to be conducive to that lineup. I think for a lot of time, a lot of front offices, maybe they undersell that. I understand it comes into the factor when you're building a team, but this is a ballpark that offers a rare opportunity to have all this power in this lineup to go out and truly go out and win majority of your home games. And that can push you towards a surprise postseason berth. If you're able to win and finish 10, 15 games over 500 at home and still sort of be middle of the road on the road. I'm not saying it's there. I'm not as high on them, but again, they're going to be super exciting to watch. Fantasy baseball watch is a lot of upside for a lot of these players. And we'll see if they can take the next step because they're trying to build something on the path towards Vegas. And unfortunately, I wish it was in Oakland. I wish they were still at the Coliseum doing what they did over there. Because this is a team that feels like the Oakland fanatics, those people at the Oakland Coliseum would have just gravitated towards all these personalities, all the great power. You can't help but think about what the banners would look like and what the drums would sound like in big games with these players that feel like they're building something a little bit special as far as offense goes.
Oh my God. Yeah. I think 219 home runs as a team last year. We'll see. They might be able to beat that this year. Over under 75.5 wins. Maybe I'm being too much of an optimist. I feel like in these first 2 division previews, I've taken a lot more overs than I've taken unders, but hope springs eternal at this time of year. So I am going to take the over just by a smidge for the A's here. And the common thread, the name that's come up a lot and is going to continue to, Jacob Lopez. They got to get somebody on the pitching side that comes out and really impresses people. He's my X factor. The fan quote here, we had the Sleeper Athletics account chimed in here. I was able to direct message him and he got back to me very quickly. So again, finishing the sentence, the Athletics will win this division if. His answer was the Athletics will win this division if they acquire a true starting pitcher 1, an ace, or Lopez and Morales combine for 20 plus wins. So kind of goes back to what we were saying. Those guys at the bottom either need to pop and surprise people, or it sounds like his other option is have them hang around and then go get an ace. I don't know. Who are they trading? They don't want to trade any of these dudes to go get an ace. So I think the second scenario of those bottom 2 guys doing really well is more likely here. And another thing I just want to throw out there, how exciting is it that they are eventually going to add Leo DeVries to this offense? That's so cool, man. So cool.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's a lot to be excited for the Athletic fans, wherever they reside at this moment. I know there's a lot of people that feel alienated as an Athletic fan base, but this team feels like they're bonded by really just an identity. And it's cool to see this group growing together as long as they're able to stay together. But as far as predicting the order of finish here, I think we're both in agreement that the Seattle Mariners are going to retain their championship and go on to win their second straight division. But I have the Astros finish behind them, the Texas Rangers, I have the Athletics, and then at the bottom of the basement here, I have the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. Unfortunately, lots of like with Zach Neto, as I said before, but they're not able to climb out of the hole, and they're finishing the basement once again.
How many playoff teams? All right, I think I lost Steve for a second, so I'll go ahead and give my prediction. He can chime in if he
I have a
unfreezes
playoff
here.
team coming out.
Oh, okay. Maybe it was on my end. So, all right. So I have one playoff team coming out of here as well. The Seattle Mariners are my only team coming out. So I have them in the one spot. Obviously, very similar to Steve. We only have one little difference here. So Mariners at the top, Astros finishing in second, but not enough wins to make the postseason. I have the Athletics finishing third, the Rangers finishing fourth, and the Angels still ending up at the bottom here. I would love to be the person to be a little more optimistic about the Angels, but I just cannot quite get there yet. I have to see more on the field before blindly being the ultimate optimist here. So Mariners, Astros, Athletics, Rangers, Angels. But this is the second division. I only have one team coming out of it. So stay tuned for the rest of the previews because obviously we have some more playoff spots to fill.
Absolutely. And again, as Devin mentioned, we will be giving you guys all the previews for the rest of the divisions. I believe we're having the AL and the NL West East being last. So we're going to be coming to you guys next with the AL and the NL Central in our next drop of episodes. So stay tuned for when we're dropping those as well. We'll keep you guys up to date on what's happening in spring training, the WBC, of course, and stay tuned to our socials for the Tablesetters University coverage. We'll be getting back to that for sure on there. Who knows if I hop on here for like a post-game WBC thing like I did last night. I know a lot of people appreciated the coverage because people woke up in the morning, maybe didn't watch the full game. So we're trying our best to cover baseball at all angles. And there's a lot of podcasts out there, Devin, that are covering just one team. You know what I mean? And I think there's a lot of baseball fans out there that are very informed and they love baseball. As we continue to stretch our wings and try to find different areas to cover, it's becoming very apparent that there's a lot of great baseball hiding in different places where maybe a lot of the sun doesn't shine for a lot of people to see, like college baseball and the WBC thing. I feel like there's a lot of baseball fans liking it, but the coverage of it's still sort of lacking. Sean Spradling doing a really good job. There's, Jeff Passing posting tweets about it. But as far as the coverage goes, we're trying our best to bring you guys top of the line coverage every step of the way for every angle of baseball as we continue to grow.
I'll tell you, man, my friend Rob, who you know, Steve, like he texted in the group chat a couple days ago, like, I keep on seeing, and he's a baseball fan, big Yankee fan, but a little more casual than you and I, but he keeps up. He said, I keep on seeing these highlights and like things on Instagram of the World Baseball Classic, and it looks awesome. And then he followed it up by saying, like, why was it marketed so poorly? And what he was alluding to is like he didn't even realize it was like going on or when it was going on. And that hit me a little bit because to me, I'm like, how did you not like what? But you and I, though, it's different. Like we're in a different bubble. We're consuming this stuff. We're covering this stuff. So we know every little bit. I mean, you said expanding our coverage. Who knows? We're covering everything. Maybe we'll be at your local middle school soon. Tablesetters Junior High. Like it's but in all seriousness, I found that interesting because I would never have thought that. Like, they're marketing this so terribly. But then again, like my Instagram feed when I'm running the Tablesetters account is literally all baseball. The Twitter feed is mostly all baseball. They try to sneak in some politics every once in a while. But so it is different. It's sometimes hard for you and I to really truly judge that kind of stuff.
Yeah, a lot of times, and it's the same thing with pro wrestling when I do the podcasting for that. It feels like we're in an echo chamber. So it's hard to feel and have a good feel on what has reached I wouldn't say casuals, because as you mentioned, Rob, and a lot of baseball fans they're not notably casuals, but I think for a lot of people, it needs to be put to their doorstep. And for baseball, Major League Baseball, they have players, the Players Association's involved in this, but it's not a Major League Baseball production. So unless you're seeking it out, it might be something you're not able to find. And that was the same thing with some of these highlight games we saw when they played the game in Mexico last year. I didn't feel like, even for us, that we were covering it closely, like, oh, that's happening this weekend. I had no idea. So I felt like the World Baseball Classic was on Front Street, but I think it is also maybe placing the importance on it. I've been mentioning it all the time about the WFAN coverage here in New York. Just you have these callers calling in about how much they hate it and they don't want their players to get hurt. And that kind of stuff is contagious for the game of baseball, where people sort of develop this narrative of what it means or what it doesn't mean by what they're just hearing out there. And I think a lot of opinions get based on that. But you're right. I don't think the coverage is as extensive as the original point we were making of even just outside the walls of like baseball podcasting. I think a lot of people are just very focused on getting in the weeds of their team, talking about their rosters as they're finalized for opening day. But we're trying our best to cover all the things. And honestly, I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying all the coverage of the baseball that's happening for college. We covered it last year, but being so immersed right now in college baseball and the WBC, and then it's almost like it's like a time machine to get to opening day, where it's like making all of this time in March pass. So you're going to wake up and snap out of the WBC and you're 9 days away from opening day.
Yeah, dude. I mean, it's like, that's exactly what's going to happen. It's going to end and you're going to be like, oh, in a week we get real Major League Baseball. But just one quick note and then we can sign off here. I was just looking at the home run totals to go back to the A's, and only 6 teams out homered them last year. But you know what? We got to give some love. One of those 6 teams was the Angels. So again, pop is not the problem in Los Angeles for the Angels. 226 home runs as a team in the regular season last year. So get a little pitching, man. A little pitching works out. Maybe they prove you and I wrong.
For sure. And you guys can follow us on Instagram and on X at Tablesetters Pod for all the content driving forward. Again, we'll be back with more division previews as we continue. Stay tuned for our full predictions episode as we predict the whole postseason. They're tied to these episodes. So if you're keeping score at home, let us know if you have a differing opinion on who's making the playoffs. If we're dead wrong on a team, we want the feedback. Let us know. You can also send us an email at tablesettersbaseball@gmail.com so you guys can do that as well. Any way you can get in contact with us, we're very accessible. Enjoy the show, enjoy baseball. But until that time, we'll talk to you after a while. And as always, happy baseball.
High fly ball into right field. She is gone. In a year that has been so improbable, the impossible has happened.